We have so much to unpack today.
Yeah.
And it's an episode that we've been wanting to do it, but I feel like now is the time to do it.
With May being Mental Health
Awareness
Month.
Is Mental Health Awareness Month. I have gone through many an Instagram posts during May before in my times of struggle. No, I'm not even going to say that. I opened up about my mental health during Mental Health Awareness Month years ago. And the amount of people that bombarded me with in the DMs with like, oh my God, are you okay? Do you want to talk about it? We can, you reach out if you ever want to chat. And I'm like, I'm fine now. You didn't see me when I was struggling.
Yeah.
Like you didn't know when I was struggling. I'm posting about it now because I'm out of it. And I think that that's a thing a lot of people don't understand.
Well, that's funny you say that because I've gotten that too, where I've posted about my struggles and people have been like, oh my God, do you need anything? Are you okay? And I'm like, listen, yes, but vulnerability is a superpower.
Yeah.
But it's almost like we're so conditioned to think it's like this weakness.
Yeah.
When it's like, no, I'm getting myself out of it, but it's like I'm empowered because I'm sharing that I went through this
and got
through this. And you're seeing it as like, oh, poor you. And it's like, no, when I was down bad, you didn't even fucking know.
Right.
And I did that on purpose.
I think a lot of people do.
Right, because you feel shame, and so you put on that mask, and so like me being like, no, I really did struggle. I really did struggle on a deep level. I think that's coming from an empowered place. It totally can.
Yeah. And there's sometimes the opposite. Like,
sure.
I see people sometimes will post, I'm in the worst low of my life right now and I don't know what to do. Like they'll post statuses and updates and things like that. And to me, like that is a definite cry for help. Because if you're posting that while you're in it, like that's extremely brave of you. And yes, somebody needs to check on you.
Yeah.
Right. But if you are posting like, this is what I went through and this is how hard it was, like 9 times out of 10, you're not in it anymore.
Right.
You've gotten out of it. But I wanted to talk about mental health because where I am with it now and what I think about depression and anxiety now is very different than what I thought about it when I was in it years ago. I feel like you would say the same thing.
Oh, absolutely.
So we've learned so much.
What did you think about it when you were in it? What was your feelings and experience in the moment?
I hate to do story time, but I feel like I have to do like a little bit of a backtrack because the first time I ever experienced depression was after I had my daughter. I was diagnosed with postpartum depression and anxiety. I didn't even know it until she was a year old. And it blew my fucking mind. This is in 2006. She was born in 2006. And it wasn't until 2007 that I realized.
Did you say 2006?
I did. Okay. I meant to say
That's
2016.
Very inaccurate.
2016.
A whole decade later. I was like,
she's not that old.
Yeah.
She's 7. Okay. So
the math wasn't mathing for
me. Thank you for that. I never would have noticed.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I was like,
thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
2016, I had my daughter, and it wasn't until 2017 that my husband was like, I think you might be depressed.
How did it show up?
I don't even know how to describe it because it wasn't what I thought it was. It was this feeling of like people talk about the baby blues, and the baby blues are like they're supposed to go away. They never went away, but I wasn't sad all the time. I wasn't suicidal. I wasn't in my room crying all the time. So I didn't want to hurt my baby. For some fucking reason, I thought that postpartum depression, the marker of postpartum depression was if you wanted to hurt yourself or your baby. I can't be the only one who thought that.
No, and I want to put a pin. I want to hear your story because I never thought I had depression, and I always had depression. Because I thought depression was, oh, you can't get out of bed. You're just, you can't do anything. And it can look like that. It
can be that.
But mine wasn't that.
Well,
so
it was a lot of like feeling like I was drowning for a year. And also just accepting it. And instead of saying there's something wrong, I was very much like, well, I guess this is just life with 3 kids. I had no idea it would be this hard. And this is just what the rest of my life is going to look like. And I was in my head about like, I shouldn't have had a 3rd kid. I shouldn't have wanted another baby. Like, I didn't know it was going to be this hard. Nobody told me it was going to be this hard, like, right. So to me, what I was experiencing was just life with a 3rd child. That's what I thought it was. So what really scares me is people who get that, who are diagnosed with postpartum depression with their 1st child because they don't know any different. So I'm like, they really probably are thinking, oh my God, this is what life with a baby is like. This is what being a mom is like. I didn't know it was going to be like this. I had 2 other kids. So like, I still didn't understand it. I still was like, well, it's that 3rd one. It just kind of pushed me over the edge and life is never going to be the same. So when he was like, I think you might be depressed, I was like, no, I don't.
Did it offend you?
I was a little bit like, I'm not depressed. You're just being an asshole.
So yes.
It was a little bit, it offended me because I was like, I'm not fucking depressed.
Yeah.
No. So he was like, I think you might want to talk to your doctor, my OB. But I Googled it after that because you know me and my rabbit holes. And I Googled it and like what the symptoms and signs of postpartum depression were. And I was like 9 out of 10. Like 9 out of 10. I was like, oh, fuck. I didn't know this. There are so many signs and symptoms of depression. I'm going to give an example. I did end up going on antidepressants for a little bit. I tried really hard to avoid them. I sat on this prescription for like several months and I was like, I'll start working out and then I'll get better. And then I'll start doing this and then it'll get better. And it never got better. So I did go on antidepressants for about 6 months or so. And then I weaned myself off. I didn't like the way they made me feel. I felt like they made me feel very numb, which I guess works for some people.
Can I share something that you've shared with me that like sticks out to me?
Yeah.
You said once that when you were on antidepressants, like Jason was still an addict.
Yeah.
And so let's say he would go out.
Yeah.
You'd be in, before the antidepressants, it would make you upset.
Yeah.
Where then on the antidepressants, you're like, meh.
I was very numb to.
So it's like
my emotions.
And it's even the good ones.
He liked me better.
Or even the ones where you should feel angry because it's valid. Or, you know what I mean?
The reason I got off of them was because I was watching A Star is Born with a friend. And I don't want to give the movie away, but there's a part of the movie where something very emotional happens.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't cry. And I am a big crier, as we all know.
Yeah.
I am big in my feelings. So for me not to cry and look over and see this other person very emotional, like I'm like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not crying? But then it like I started to realize all the things that it was making me numb to. So yeah, I was very apathetic in our relationship. Like he was very much still an addict. He was very much still going out and not coming home. And I just stopped caring. Like I didn't have any emotions over it. So yeah, there was a point where when I came off of them and started having these feelings come up again.
It was a lot.
It was a lot. And he was also like, I liked you better on medicine. Because I didn't get angry. I didn't get upset about what he was doing, I was a shell of myself. Even my aunt, who you met this past weekend, was like, your sparkle was gone. There was something off, and she didn't tell me this until after I came back off of him. Right. And I was like explaining this, but like, you don't know you're in that until you come out of it. And I was like, oh my God, I wasn't just like complacent and content and happy. I was numbed to what was going on around me.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I was just going to say, like, I think a lot of people are scared of feelings.
I can see why.
Right. Yeah. And I understand it and I get it.
Yeah.
But like Jason being like, oh, wow, she's feeling things, like you should go back on medicine.
Yeah.
Which I want to get into that later too.
Absolutely. Well, and so the scared of feelings, like those feelings were telling me so many things. Mm-hmm. My panic attacks were telling me things. My anxiety was telling me things. That depression was telling me stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Because it didn't feel good.
Yeah.
And I think even in my relationship, being married to an alcoholic, he preferred me to not have feelings. You know, we've come a long way since then. Now I'll just cry for nothing.
I can feel that I'm going to cry this episode. I can literally just feel it.
You can feel it.
I don't know when it's coming, but I can
It'll happen. So thank you for like sharing that part, because there's so much to it. There's no way I can touch on it in one episode or in one little story time. Right. So depression for me wasn't what I thought. There was another instance. I had a client years ago tell me, you know, she would open up to me about things, and one of the things that she was feeling a lot of was like rage and anger, bouts of anger. And I remember at the end, she was just like, you know, I opened up to my therapist and she told me, I was worried I was depressed. And she told me, well, you can't be depressed because you're angry. And if you're depressed, you don't feel anger. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. No, I interjected. Okay. And I said, I hate to like say anything about your therapist, but what worries me about what she said is that when you look up the signs and the symptoms of depression, anger is one of them. And it's like bursts of anger. And so I said, I don't know that what she said is accurate. I would feel bouts of rage all the time when I was depressed. Yeah. And I got in my head about it because afterwards I was like, I shouldn't have said that. Oh my God. Like now she's going to hate me. The next appointment she came to me and she was just like, you were right. Turns out I was depressed. And I was like, oh, thank God. Because I felt like I overstepped, you know, I felt like I overstepped by saying that, but I'm happy that I shared because I was like,
I don't think that you did.
I didn't, but I thought I did at the time. This was years ago. Right.
Old Leah.
I was finding my voice at the time, and every time it came out, I'd be like, oh God, it came out.
Well, and
the inside thoughts came out.
Well, and to share like about me, I never thought I was depressed.
Yeah.
Because I was angry. And so like if I would have had someone like you who was like, no, I don't think that's just whatever. Like I think that there might be some sadness and grief there. So like you brought up your aunt.
Yeah.
I met her this past weekend and she is divine, absolutely lovely, like so wonderful. And like she's the first, again, human design, but she's the first reflector that I've ever met. And I know. And it was like whatever any person needed, she had this way of like giving it back.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild and hard to explain, but
well, if you're nasty with her, she's going to be nasty back.
Oh no, Scorpio sis. But what I was going to say is we were talking the other night and she sent me like a really nice message. Like it was so nice meeting you, yada, yada, yada. And you're like, I love her so much. And I'm like, I get it.
Yeah. Fuck. Are you going to cry? I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. It's just feelings. It's just emotions. It's okay. We can't reach the Kleenexes.
but she's wonderful. And you said she was my safe space. Did you have that in any aunts or uncles or anybody? And I was like, no, I didn't. And I really needed it badly. And I never thought I was depressed because I went to work, I went to school, did college, did all the things. But I was so angry. But the reason why I was angry is because there was so much grief. Because I didn't have anybody. And I didn't have support. And I didn't have the tools. But a lot of things happened and I didn't know what to do with it all. And it was a lot. And I really wish I would have had that. And again, I've done a lot of healing. But that moment, it made me feel, when we had that conversation, it made me feel really sad. But it also made me feel really proud of myself for the work that I've done. Yeah. I told you it was coming.
We didn't know it'd be that quick.
I could feel it. I don't even know where I was going with that. But again, I think a lot of people think that depression is this like one size fits all. And it's not that.
It doesn't look.
And so I spent a lot of years suffering because I didn't think I was depressed. I just thought I was angry. But it was really like, I genuinely did have depression. And I had depression for most of my life. And I didn't know it, and I didn't have help, and I didn't have tools. So,
thank you for sharing that. I feel really bad.
Don't feel bad.
I shouldn't. I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't feel bad.
Okay. I knew that conversation was like,
it hit.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, there's this, yours, I think yours was a lot of anger and mine was a lot of sadness.
Yeah.
And that's how it showed up. I would cry every day on my way to work. And it's like thinking back now, I'm like, duh, motherfucker. I was crying every day on my way to work, but I would just chalk it up to feeling, well, I'm overwhelmed and this is my break from my family life. But I also feel like being at work was not a break.
Yeah.
But
can I say why I wasn't sad?
Yeah.
I wasn't safe enough I didn't feel safe enough to be sad.
Holy shit. So anger felt safe for you.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because
that makes me just want to hug you so bad. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
God, we're not even
Jesus.
20 minutes in.
It's just feelings.
It's just feelings.
No,
it's not a big deal.
I didn't feel safe to be sad. That was way too vulnerable for me. So angry was the mask that I wore.
Yeah.
And I wore it so people wouldn't mess with me.
You wore it well.
Yeah.
I think I remember talking to you in the beginning of our newfound friendship, about depression and what it was like for me, and you being like, wait a minute. Was I depressed? Was that what I was feeling?
Yeah.
What's interesting is several years later, my husband, I started noticing the same signs and symptoms, just this feeling of unworthiness, hopelessness, feeling stuck in life, he used to always say to me, and this is pre-sober husband, you have nothing to be depressed about. You have 3 healthy kids. Look at our life. Our life is so good. We have food on the table and clothes and shelter and life is good. Why are you so depressed? And that would make me feel even worse.
Yeah. I think
it didn't help at all, because then I would be like, you're right.
Right.
Why am I depressed?
Right.
And I would get depression guilt.
Right. Because I think there's a lot of shame with it.
There is.
There's so much shame with it.
Yeah.
So, I totally understand that.
So when he started to get there and I'm looking at him, seeing the signs, seeing the symptoms, and it went on for a few months, and I finally said, I think you're depressed.
Right.
This is before he ever did his first mushroom journey, which we don't have to get into that, but he did his first mushroom journey because he was depressed, not because he was trying to get sober.
Oh, shit.
I don't know if you knew that.
I don't know if I knew that.
No, he did it because he was depressed and he wanted out of it. Wow. He didn't like it. So I was like, I came to him, he's opening up to me, and I was like, yeah, I think you're depressed. He's like, no, I'm not sad. And I'm like, I think you have a very big misunderstanding of what depression actually is. Like, I can see it in you. And it took him going to his doctor, who's a male, and his doctor prescribing him Wellbutrin and saying, I think you're depressed, for him to come home and be like, I think I'm depressed.
Did he take Wellbutrin?
He didn't. No, he's
to?
always been very anti-medication for himself because his mother is very highly medicated. And even with me being on medication at first, he was like hesitant. Like, that's why I didn't take it for a while, because he was like, maybe if you start working out, maybe if you start going outside more, maybe if you start journaling, like, he did try to help, and when nothing helped because I was in a toxic relationship and not a safe environment to feel my feelings.
Right.
So, I ended up, I want to say caving. I don't think of it that way now, but I caved and I was just like, fuck it, I'm going on meds. So yeah, interesting, because he asked me to guide him on a mushroom journey because he was depressed and he didn't want to be depressed anymore. Wow. And it pulled him out of that. But then it started to show him his shit.
Yeah.
And life for him got much harder afterwards. So anyway, I didn't mean to that's what I'm like, this is a really big episode. I don't know how we're going to do this.
Yeah, I feel like this might be a long one. I don't know.
I'm so sorry in advance. It's just an interesting, it's a very large topic.
Yeah.
But I think it needs to be talked about. So, after my first round of postpartum depression, getting on medication, weaning off after 6 months, it felt like it had gone away. And then it came back a few years later. Right before COVID hit, came back. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, it's not postpartum anymore. This is just depression. Like, I could feel it, and it felt the same. And I was like, well, I guess I am just going to have this on and off the rest of my life now. And it's just the way I am, and it's a chemical imbalance, and something is wrong with me. So every time I start feeling depressed, I'm going to go back on the meds for a little while and then wean myself off.
I so relate to that feeling of doom. This is just how I am. This is just how it's going to be. This is just how I'm going to feel.
Yeah. And it comes and goes.
Sure.
And that's just kind of what I thought that it was going to be for the rest of my life. I'm just going to be this person who comes in and out of depressive episodes. And the weird thing is, the second time around, I knew it. I could feel it. I could feel it as it was almost like this wave coming towards me, and I couldn't escape it. I was like, I could feel it coming. There's nothing I can do about it. Here we go again, And then about 6 months after that is when I did my first mushroom journey. We had somebody on a podcast previously who was talking about mushrooms and mental health and depression and anxiety. And I was like, it blew my fucking mind.
And we've said it before. You had a podcast about cannabis. I wasn't the co-host.
Yeah.
But you were all the cannabis trained.
And now I'm not.
Now you're not. Which is funny.
I'm not a hater.
No.
At all. I just don't use it the way I used to use it.
Well, you used to use it as an escape.
Yes. 100%. I started to realize I was doing exactly what my husband was doing, just in a different way.
I think too, intention with everything matters so much, whether it's a substance. It's literally everything in your life. Intention matters.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
About that was interesting. Side note, a couple of weeks ago, I was at the track with a group of friends, and the person who was working in our suite, who was just like kind of the hostess, doing all the food and the drinks and stuff. For some reason, we got talking about anxiety, and she was like, they make meds for that. And she wasn't talking to me, but then the conversation kind of went on from there. She's like, see, the trick is, though, don't take them too long. Wean off of them, because otherwise you'll get addicted and you'll stay on them for the rest of your life, because they'll just keep upping your dose. And so even her view of like being on the medication to help with anxiety was just like, don't stay on them too long. Wean yourself off.
But I also think that's much easier said than done.
It's absolutely much easier said than done. But I was just like, good for you for not like...
Right. Just saying, just use this for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And up your dose when it stops working. Right. And try this one when that one stops working. Right. And maybe if you try this one on top of this one, that'll work, Right. So I like what she said about it. But to me, that was like intention matters. Mm-hmm. So if you have to have it, okay, maybe you don't have a safe space. Maybe you don't have an environment where you can feel like you can work through these issues, and medication is like the only option that you have. But for me, personally, what I would believe, and now that looking back, I would say get yourself into a position where you can work through those things. Find a safe place. Get a safe environment. Remove yourself from the toxic environment, so you can work on those things and heal those things. Yeah. So anyway, I was going to read something that I wrote. I feel like we have several things that we have.
I remember this.
Okay. So I wrote this after my second mushroom journey, which came about a year after my first one. So 2021. This was October 21 that I wrote this. And I just had all of these realizations about depression, because I did my second journey because I was in a depressive episode again. And I was like, what the fuck?
Well, so you were in probably the worst depressive episode you've ever had.
Yeah.
Because of like Jason was deep in his addiction.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of like, you did not have a good environment around you.
Yeah. And if I can rewind a little bit, I did my first journey June of 2021 or June of 2020. My husband did not get sober until June of 2021, a few months after his first journey. So a year later, he gets sober, and I start slipping into like one of the worst depressive episodes of my life. And it didn't make sense to me at the time, because I'm like, he's getting sober. What the fuck is wrong with me? And our psychiatrist, Dr. Shealy,
dude, my man,
said to me, well, it makes sense to me, because it's like you've been holding your breath for 15 years and you're finally able to let go and breathe. And so all of this stuff is coming up that you've been avoiding and suppressing because you've just been in survival mode. So I never thought of it that way. But that's exactly, as soon as he said that, I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, because now he's doing the work, but all this shit that I've been like pushing down and pushing down and pushing down is starting to come up, because it's starting to get safe. That's something I don't think people talk about enough, is how much comes up when you're in it, when you are finally in a safe environment.
Oh my God, yeah.
With someone who's safe, in a safe household. Like, that's when all this shit starts to surface, because you wouldn't be able to survive if it was just like all the time.
Right. Even now, I could feel myself getting emotional, because it's a heavy topic, and it's something that I never used to ever talk about.
Well, you said just right then, like, you had a safe space.
Right.
And you didn't.
Like, I feel safe to share it now. I didn't feel safe to share it before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, even me crying, like oftentimes when that comes up, people feel like, oh my God, I'm crying, and I'm like, no, but you need to cry.
Right.
You should cry.
Let it out.
Right. Like, yeah,
It's okay.
that was an experience that, was traumatic for you.
Yeah.
And so like suppressing it doesn't work. But anyways.
Even when you think it does.
It doesn't.
Even when you think it does.
It doesn't.
Like, even my husband used to say, well, what's the point of feeling it? That's not productive. I've got to live my life. I've got to do my job. I've got to take care of my kids. I got to take care of my family. And I'm like, you say that, but it keeps showing up.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps showing up in these other areas of your life. And so while you think you're doing a really good job of like packing it away and there's no point in looking at it, I see it. I can see it still. You may not.
Right.
But the people around you do, the people who love you do, you know?
Yeah.
So after my second journey, which was when I was like in the lowest depressive episode of my life, because I was able to let go and finally breathe and I was finally safe. And what's wild is like I felt safe enough to like let it out. Like I was having like, they felt bigger to me than panic attacks. They felt bigger than an anxiety attack. They were like full blown just mental breakdowns where I wanted to be hospitalized because I didn't know how to stop them. And my husband didn't know what was going on. And
but
I
it
was
scared
like,
him.
Oh, it terrified him.
Yeah.
I think he needed to see it though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what got him sober. Like, cause he was just like, oh shit, I'm hurting someone.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I was doing this.
Right.
So yeah, those were the things that I was like pushing down. Anyway, see, now I'm like getting emotional. Jesus Christ, this is going to be a tough one. Okay, so I wrote this out because I just had this different view of what depression was for me. I said, hear me out. What if depression and anxiety is your body telling you that there's some healing you need to do? It's begging you to address it, to feel it, and to learn from it. What if my postpartum depression wasn't just triggered because I had had a baby, but because I had had unhealed mother wounds that were magnified when I had a daughter of my own? And that the mother-daughter relationship I craved my entire life was just triggered and sent me into a spiral of emotions I wasn't prepared for. That's interesting too, because I had 2 boys and I didn't feel it until I had her. But I had some deep, deep mother wounds.
Yeah.
And also like taking a step back and seeing my relationship for what it was and realizing like I would never want my daughter to be treated the way that I was treated. Ever. I don't know how to explain it, but it's different with boys. It's not because I didn't, like, I felt like having her was like reliving my childhood.
Oh, I get that.
Okay.
Well, and for me, like, I have a lot of deep father wounds.
Yeah.
And mother wounds, but you know,
we got both. You know,
right,
we're just a bag of tricks over here.
So having a child has like, in a lot of ways, it can be very triggering because you see this little
innocent child,
and you're like, oh shit, I got treated in certain ways, or was exposed to certain things, or experienced certain things, and I like literally can't imagine my son experiencing those things or not sitting with him and his feelings, or, it's this blessing and a curse because you feel a deep amount of grief.
Yeah.
Becoming a mother.
Yeah.
Because you didn't get those things.
Yes.
And you're giving those things.
It's okay. This is kind of what I'm saying. Like that postpartum is like really like a reflection of like maybe something you didn't have as a child and realizing you didn't. I understand. It's okay. You want me to keep going? Okay. You're right though. Like it's, I saw the way that I finally like woke up to how I was being treated. And I was just like, I can't imagine my daughter like being in a relationship like this.
Yeah.
Or having the childhood that I had. And again, it's not that I didn't think that with my boys, but like, you know, I did my best to like give them a different life. But it was just that daughter hit me in my wounds.
I also
much
think
deeper.
too that like when you had your boys, you were just surviving.
Oh, I was in it so deep I didn't know what I was in.
Right.
I did not know. I didn't wake up to what I was in until I did mushrooms.
Yeah.
Those
Same.
are the show you your shit. And let me remove that veil for you so you can get a glimpse of what your life is really like and not what you thought it was. And that really fucked my world up. It really fucking did.
Yeah.
Okay, so what if becoming a parent brings out our inner child and the pain that we felt that was never acknowledged? How can you heal from something when you keep telling yourself there isn't anything to heal from? What if instead of prescribing your medications at the first sign of depression, your doctor suggests you see a therapist or a psychiatrist or get help instead? What if they actually asked you what you've been going through, what your childhood was like, what kind of trauma you've experienced, the whys, the deep stuff that we don't even like to ask ourselves? What if instead of accepting that it runs in your family and it's genetic, maybe it's there because of the generations of trauma and pain that have been ignored or swept under the rug? And no one has been able to heal from them yet because they didn't know how. What if you're the one who's supposed to break that cycle? What if breaking that cycle means your children won't have to feel all the things you felt? They have better coping skills. They don't repeat the patterns you did. They recognize the red flags sooner. They know how to heal. Now I'm going to cry. God, I wrote this like 3 years ago and it still hits. What if we have to go in to get out of it? We're so busy trying to get out of our heads. But what if the answer is there? What if you can't fix your marriage or your relationships because you're working with two broken parts? And until you fix those individually, nothing will ever be as good as a whole. What if you can both heal at the same time, but you have to unlearn patterns you've both been holding on to for a very long time? And what if we can't heal because there are people in our lives holding us back, and those people are hard to let go of? Maybe they're family, lifelong friends, spouses, or significant others. What if instead of medicating or drinking and disassociating and smoking, yes, I said that because at the time I was smoking, staying busy and ignoring the trauma to get out of our heads, we ask ourselves how we can move through them and heal from them. Ask ourselves where the pain is coming from, and we ask ourselves why we continue to live the same things over and over. Why are we so okay with pretending we're okay when we're not? Why are we going through the motions of life, of living, but dying inside? That's all I wrote. And then I said, this was shortly after my journey, and I said, one day I'll document and maybe share. Who knew that?
I know.
You
and
manifested
I did that.
Right now, I'm still processing, integrating, and living. My first experience with mushrooms changed me. My last one saved me. I found myself again when I thought I had lost her. I realized that as much as I feared abandonment, I had been abandoning myself. It helped me understand parenting my inner child, something I didn't want to do because I didn't think it was fair. We'll talk about that.
Yep.
It taught me how to love myself enough to want better, and I deserved better than what I had been allowing. So what's interesting is that same summer, a study came out proving
share it,
that depression is not a chemical imbalance. It's not. Let me tell you why. They will prescribe you SSRIs and SNRIs that are pumping you full of serotonin because they have always said depression is a lack of serotonin. And what they have found, and this study, when studies come out like this, you don't like, they've been working on them for like decades. They've been trying to find the proof for decades. It's not just on a whim this study came out. They have been working on this for a very long time, and they were finally able to prove that depression has nothing to do with serotonin. You can have high levels of serotonin
and still have
depression. So knowing that, and here's what's wild, this study came out in July of 2021.
Nobody's talking about it.
Nobody's talking about it. So my question is...
You know why? Because I feel like it doesn't fit the agenda.
Right.
And again...
It's like when we had our episode on MDMA and Oprah did the episode where it puts holes in your brain, and she didn't do the episode that debunked that.
Right.
It's like... Oh, but that's not getting talked about.
Right.
The other side of it's not getting talked about.
Well, and we are a pill-pushing society. That's the world that we live in. So something like that.
And knowing what I know now and how it made me feel, I can see why people push it.
Yeah.
Like it removes your empathy in situations. I think that's why we are such a world who is like lacking empathy. You think you're empathetic, but you're not. It removes that. Like it I can't even describe it. Like I had no empathy for what happened in that movie. I was very apathetic to what was going on in my life.
But I
was complacent.
I do like how you're like, no, but usually, like, you had enough self-awareness where you're like, usually something like this would make me sob because I would feel so sad for what's happening. And I don't feel that. Why don't I feel that?
Right.
I think sometimes it may be hard for people to recognize that because they're so deep in it.
And I also think that some people feel like it's not good to cry.
Yeah.
A lot.
Well, yeah, we're a society, like I said,
we don't like
just
feelings.
Yeah.
And I'm in a very different place now, and I will cry 10 times a day, and it's nothing.
What did you say?
Nothing.
What did you say the other day? Our friend Sarah was like, "Are you about to cry?"
Oh, yeah.
And you're like,
she goes, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No."
Yeah. No, you go.
I said,
you go.
I said,
yeah.
Yeah. And she goes, "You look like you're about to cry." And I was like, "I am." And then I just started bawling. But we were both laughing about it because she was just like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yes. I'm just going to cry."
Well, and also, like, even me crying earlier, like, I feel better that I released it.
Right?
You know what I mean? Yes. Instead of holding it in, because I could feel myself holding it in.
I think it makes people really uncomfortable because they just want to fix it.
But also, they're uncomfortable because they're uncomfortable with their own feelings.
Right. It's
so
like,
you having feelings is very uncomfortable for them.
Someone who is emotionally unavailable in a relationship is not able to sit with their own emotions. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with you. Mm-hmm. It's because they're emotionally unavailable for themselves. Mm-hmm. So like all that crying and like they're like, "I don't cry. I don't do that. I can't remember the last time I cried."
Right.
Well, that's not. What are you?
It's
what
not
are
a
you
flex.
stuffing?
Right.
What are you avoiding? Like, we are meant to feel. Like, we're meant to have emotions and to feel things deeply. So, where was I going with that?
The chemical imbalance.
The chemical imbalance. It's not a thing. So, again, I'm not on here, like, hating on anybody who's on medications. I just want people to think about what they're doing and why. Because if you're being told that you have a chemical imbalance and it's genetic and it's passed down from from grandmother to mother to you, or grandfather to father to you, and you just believe it, then of course you're going to be like, "Oh, well, then this pill will help me because it'll help fix that imbalance."
But to that I say, depression isn't passed down.
No.
Trauma is passed down.
Yes.
And, grandma was traumatized because of this, and that. And then didn't have the tools, didn't have the knowledge, didn't have the support. Right. None of those things. Passed it down to mom.
Grandma was sad because she stuffed it down.
Well, and think about this. Think about being raised by a depressed mom. And then what your experience may be like.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that it's passed down genetically. It's just that that's what you're around. Think about like being raised by a traumatized adult.
Right. It's what
who's never done anything to deal or heal with it. And again, I give a lot of compassion to the older generations because they didn't have the tools.
Right.
But we have better tools.
We have the tools.
And we have the knowledge. They didn't have the knowledge.
We have TikTok. We have podcasts.
There's us.
We have people out there giving different information, and the information is out there when you're searching for it. It's not hidden either. Like it's out there.
Right. But going back to like sometimes people choose, because I've gotten in arguments with people about this.
About what?
About like, well, it's just how I am. It's just a chemical imbalance.
Yes.
And I'm like, you think that way because you're searching for things to validate that.
Right.
So that's shown to not be true anymore, but you're not willing to see that because it
doesn't go with what you want it to be.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which that's a whole other thing. But
so yeah, there's just a lot of information out there that's kind of proving otherwise. And I think the generational trauma, that is something that can be passed down. Coping skills can be learned, but they can also be unlearned.
Yeah.
And so that's like another thing. Like I'm giving examples, and I have the same things, but like I still do. Like we all do. We have coping skills that we learned and that we picked up, and behaviors. But I'm giving this example because it's such an easy one. But like my husband would give me the silent treatment when I was upset with him.
Oh, yeah.
And so because I have abandonment issues, I would like to get that connection back because he was giving me the silent treatment. I would apologize for being upset. And it would fix the connection, I thought. Like it wasn't real, but I was going to say it was
a false connection.
It was a false connection, but I felt connection because I didn't want him to take it away from me. It was almost like a punishment. And it wasn't until the last several years that I watched and I saw where he got it from, and he got it from his mom. And his mom would give the silent treatment when she was upset, but wouldn't tell you why. And so that's what he learned.
Right, it's learned behavior.
It's like, if I'm upset, I'm just not going to talk to her.
Right.
Until she's not upset anymore.
Yeah.
And until she can talk to me. Yeah. Until she apologizes to me. I'm just not going to talk to her.
Yeah.
And so I was like picking up on all these patterns of behavior and being able to pinpoint where they came from in myself too.
Right, right.
And it just kind of like, it fucked me up a little bit because we had to do a lot of work to unlearn that. Yeah. For me to be like, no, you can't give me the silent treatment. You've got to communicate with me. If I'm upset, or if you're upset with me, tell me why so I can understand it and not do it anymore. Or we can have a conversation about it, post drinking. Yeah. Pre-drinking, I'm like, I didn't do anything wrong for being mad that you stayed out all night, whatever.
But it's hard to unlearn. I think healing is a lot of unlearning.
It's so much
and
unlearning.
Unbecoming.
Yeah.
And undoing. And just being. But I watched a father who got angry and people were scared or intimidated. And so I thought that was like power.
Yeah.
And used that.
Yeah. I can see how people get stuck in that. Because it does feel, anger is very powerful. Mm-hmm. It feels very powerful. But the way I see it now is very different because I'm like, actually, you're really sad.
I know. There's so much grief under there.
Like, you're not angry, you're sad. Let's talk about it.
I know.
Like, what are you running from?
Yeah.
Like, what are you hiding?
But we're also really conditioned to not talk. We're conditioned to not talk. We're conditioned to not feel. And so now I feel like we have more tools than we've ever had, but also mental health is such a big issue right now. Yeah. I see so many teens who are medicated and struggling and again, like we have all of this at our fingertips. So why is this a problem?
I wonder that sometimes, and I think that like maybe my algorithm is different. like I feel like we're so in this space. And sometimes I think what is common knowledge for us, someone else has never heard a day in their lives. And so that makes me really sad.
Yeah, that's true.
It really does, because it's not the stuff that's being put out there. It's the stuff you kind of have to go digging for, or be around people who know these things. So yeah, it's sad. The way I see depression now, and I think I said something to you about this, because I sent you a reel on Instagram, because I was like, I feel this way, but I've never talked about it because I don't know why I feel this way. And then I just heard someone else say the same thing about depression. And I was like, oh, I'm not the only one who feels that.
Okay, what was it? I don't remember.
It was the Are We Man Enough podcast, I think. And he was like asking him to describe depression, or like what depression as a man feels like. And the way that he was describing it is the way that I feel about it. I'm like, I think it's normal and natural to feel these things. And let me go back, because we interviewed our friend Allie, who was talking about after her first mushroom journey, she went into like a depressive episode and was like staying in. And I remember when I first started healing, it looked very similar to depression. And to someone on the outside, they would look at me and think I was depressed again, because I was isolating. I was keeping to myself. From the outside, it probably looked very similar, but I was like, no, this is different though. I'm going into my feels and I'm feeling them, because I know it's going to come and go. And then I'm going to come out fresh and renewed. So if you don't hear from me, I'm okay. But like, if I was depressed, I wouldn't have been. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it looks similar.
But I think when you like start doing the work, a lot of things come up. A lot of realizations come up, and they're heavy, and there's a lot of grief that comes with it.
Yeah.
And so it's okay, and you need to feel it, and you know you're going to be okay, but they're still heavy.
So that's kind of where my stance is now. Like, I'm like, now I don't even know if I would call them depressive episodes, because, you know, they'll come and they'll go. But I know now.
Spiritual awakenings. No?
I think it's just some things that I need to sit through.
Yeah.
Sit in for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then come out of when I'm done. So to me, I'm not getting stuck in the depression. I'm feeling what I need to feel. It's like a calling to like, now we're going to go do some more work. Like, you did this work over here, but like now this stuff is coming up, and you need to sit with this, and you need to understand it, and you need to process it, and you need to feel it so we can work through it. So like now it's almost like an invitation to go in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and I do it because I know I'm going to find my way back out. I think a lot of people don't see it that way, and they try to get rid of it.
That, and I think a lot of people, like when we say, you know, you got to feel to heal, I think a lot of people, that's such a foreign concept to them. They're like, I don't even know where to start. I got to go to work. I got my kids. I got this. Like, I got that.
I don't have time to do that.
Right. So what would you say to somebody who said that? Or thought that?
Oh God, that's a hard one, because I feel like, yes, it does take time, but I feel like if you don't do it, like it's going to just keep bleeding on the rest of your life. And it's going to keep getting louder, and it's going to keep getting harder to ignore. So like, why not set aside time? It doesn't mean you don't have to go to work. It doesn't mean you don't have to live your life. Like, right. But maybe don't go out on the weekends and drink with your friends. Maybe isolate a little bit. Maybe don't. I think when I isolate, I don't hang out with people a lot. And I think that before, old me would have never said no to plans. And I would have had something going on every weekend. And so now I am okay with sitting at home and working on my shit so I can be better when I come out of it. I think a lot of people don't know how to say no to those things.
I have JOMO, the joy of missing out.
JOMO.
I do not have FOMO. I have JOMO.
Oh my God. Like, you're totally fine. I feel like I'm fine with like missing out on things too.
I used to want to miss out, but then get pressured into doing things, so I did. Where now I'm like,
actually, I'm fine.
Oh, good.
That doesn't sound like it's a
No,
fun thing.
I'm gonna stay at home.
Okay, so we have another screenshot that I wanted to say. Let me see if it's like. Okay, I'm gonna read this first.
Okay.
Because this kind of goes along with what I'm saying. I hyperfixate on books that I feel like change my life.
I don't think that's bad.
No, I don't think it's bad.
Yeah.
But I feel like I recommend this book a lot. It's kind of like with the Four Agreements and The Alchemist. I'm like, these are the books that changed my life. Like, this is one of them. And there is
Have you finished it?
Yeah. I'm going through it again and I'm like highlighting.
Okay. I'm going to literally buy it today.
Yeah. It's so good. Yeah, I'd let you borrow it, but
No.
I'm kind of a book whore and I'm stingy with it. So this is called The Heroine's Journey, A Woman's Quest for Wholeness. And then part of the heroine's journey, which we will have someone who talks about this. There's the separation from the feminine, identification with the masculine and gathering of allies, the road of trials, finding the illusionary boon of success, awakening to feelings of spiritual aridity, initiation and descent to the goddess. That's the part I'm about to read, the initiation. Urgent yearning to reconnect with the feminine, healing the mother-daughter split, healing the wounded masculine, and then the integration of the masculine and the feminine. So there's like steps to this journey. It's not linear. You can be on this step and then this step and then this step and then like you can be on multiple steps at once. But the initiation and the descent is what I want to read about. I'm really sorry. Story time. Okay. The descent is characterized as a journey to the underworld, the dark night of the soul, the belly of the whale, the meeting of the dark goddess, or simply as depression. It is usually precipitated by a life-changing loss. Experiencing the death of one's child, parent, or spouse with whom one's life and identity has been closely intertwined may mark the beginning of the journey to the underworld. Women often make their descent when a particular role, such as daughterhood, motherhood, lover, or spouse, comes to an end. A life-threatening illness or accident, the loss of self-confidence or livelihood, a geographical move, the inability to finish a degree, a confrontation with the grasp of an addiction, or a broken heart can open the space for dismemberment and descent. The journey to the underworld is filled with confusion and grief, alienation and disillusion, rage and despair. A woman may feel naked and exposed, dry and brittle, or raw and turned inside out. I felt this way while fighting advanced cervical dysplasia during the dissolution of my marriage and when I lost confidence in myself as an artist. Each time I had to face truths about myself and my world that I wished not to see, and each time I was chastened and cleansed by the fires of transformation. In the underworld, there's no sense of time. Time is endless and you cannot rush your stay. There's no morning, day, or night. It is densely dark and unforgiving. This all-pervasive blackness is moist, cold, and bone-chilling. There are no easy answers in the underworld, and there is no quick way out. Silence pervades when the wailing ceases. One is naked and walks on the bones of the dead. To the outside world, a woman who has begun her descent is preoccupied, sad, and inaccessible. Her tears often have no name, but they are ever present, whether she cries or not. She cannot be comforted. She feels abandoned. She forgets things. She chooses not to see friends. She curls up in a ball on the couch or refuses to come out of her room. She digs in the earth or walks in the woods. The mud and the trees become her companions. She enters a period of voluntary isolation, seen by her family and friends as a loss of her senses. Several years ago, in the midst of a lecture on the heroine's journey that I was giving at Cal State Long Beach, a woman in the back of the lecture hall raised her hand and impatiently interrupted me when I mentioned voluntary isolation. She cried out, "You've just named what I've been going through the past 9 months."
Wow.
Everyone turned their heads to see the woman in her late 40s rise from her chair with dignity. Up until this time, I was the owner and chief executive of a large design firm pulling down over $200,000 a year. And one day I went into work and I just didn't know who I was anymore. I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. I was very disoriented. I left work, went home, and never went back again. She goes into her story, but it's kind of similar, so I'm not going to read all that. She had just spoken a truth that every woman who has made the descent knows. Women find their way back to themselves not by moving up and out into the light, like men, but by moving down into the depths of the ground of their being. Her metaphor of digging the earth to find her way back to herself expresses a woman's initiation process. The spiritual experience for women is of moving more deeply into yourself rather than out of yourself. Many women describe the need to remove themselves from the male realm during this period of voluntary isolation. Okay. I read this and I was like, that's exactly how I feel. I have looked at depression recently. This is the descent into healing. And I do it willingly now. Like, it's not comfortable, but I voluntarily isolate and I work my shit out. And I think you do too. Like, where I think we're getting it wrong is so many people try to avoid that. They're feeling the initiation, but they're doing everything they can to avoid it, because you know what we're told to do? And this is why the episode with Allie kind of reminded me of this. Her sister's calling her and telling her, like, you just got to go. You just got to just get out and go somewhere and get out and meet people. And Allie kept saying, I just want to be. Like, I don't want to do. And so many people try to talk us out of the being and the descending and the figuring it out.
Just be happy.
Just go out and have fun. Go spend some time with your friends. Like, go do this. Go out here. Go do this. Go exercise. And while I believe that exercise and movement helps, when it is real, when it is like a depression and a call to like the dark side of your shit, like, there's no escaping it. Like, you can't medicate it away. You can't run from it. You can't avoid it. You can't smoke it away. What you're supposed to do is just be in it.
Go in.
And that's really hard for us as a society. And it's not what we've been taught.
Yeah.
So that was my little added touch. I know.
And it's funny because, like, I have not read that book, but that's like what I naturally do now. Right. Like, I know it's going to be okay.
That's why.
And I know, like, coming out on the other end,
yes,
I'm going to be fine.
That's why when I saw that guy talk about what depression meant for him, I was like, I have felt that, but I didn't know how to explain it. And then same, reading this book, I was like, oh my God, I do that now. Like, when I feel the call to descend, like, I just go. I don't want to say willingly, because we know when it's coming and we know it's going to be really hard, but like, we don't run from it the way that we used to.
Yeah. I'm going to read that book. And so what I've been doing with Tony is we read, like, I literally read to him. And
I love that.
It's very healing. And it's like, so it's like, it's collaborative, and we're right now we're reading Us by Terrence Real, which I highly, highly, highly recommend for couples. But it's like, we'll read, it's a therapist who works with couples, and he'll be saying like some of the patients that he has and like what their struggles are. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it makes me think of this person or myself or whatever. And we talk, and it's like collaborative. And so this is next on our list.
Yeah, it's a good one because the heroine's journey, while this book is like a woman's quest for wholeness, men go through this too. Mm-hmm. Like just like women go through the hero's journey, men also go through the heroine's journey, mm-hmm. and they also connect with like the divine feminine and heal the divine masculine, and so this would be a really good one for you guys.
Yeah,
especially as a father of daughters.
I know.
So
exactly what
I love that you guys do that. Sometimes when we talk about our relationships now on the podcast, like we sound like those cheesy couples, and I just need everybody to know that that's not the way we used to be. We've had to like create that.
No, I trained him.
Right.
I trained him. That's my puppy.
You did a great job.
You did too.
I know. I created my safe space.
But I think the women start it.
Yes.
And the
women
families
start the healing.
Yeah.
That whole like.
I think that's our role as women. Like we have the opportunity to start the movement.
Well, and the thing that I wrote where it said like, even though you don't feel like it's fair, like we didn't touch on that, but like.
Well, let's touch on it.
Let's touch on it before you speak to that thing, because when you realize you have to be the one to do the work, even though you were the one who was traumatized and hurt, there is an air of, why should I have to do all this? This is really hard. It's not fair. Mm-hmm. The other people don't have to do anything to mend this. Mm-hmm. I have to do this. That's not fair.
Yeah.
And you said the same thing.
Oh, I was angry that I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the work, but it just pisses me off that I'm the one that has to fucking do this. And they don't have to do this, and they don't have to do this, and they don't have to do this. Where now that has changed.
Yes.
Especially after my last journey, where it was like experiencing all of the ancestral trauma, where it was like, this person was raped, feeling the trauma of childbirth. This person grew up with an addict, this, like so much that got passed down, where it was like, no, let that go, because you get to do this. They didn't have the tools. They didn't have the knowledge. Whatever it was, you do. And like, you are the chosen one to get to change the narrative of this family lineage.
That is exactly how I feel about it now, because you and I and the people we love are doing the work. The people who aren't, I feel really bad for.
Yeah, and
it's not like this isn't fair thing anymore. It's almost like you could do this too, and I feel really bad that you're not, because you're miserable and you make everyone around you miserable. And that's sad.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
So that whole like, this isn't fair thing, now I see it very different. Now I see it as like, I used to be like, karma doesn't ever come after them.
But
why doesn't karma ever work? And it's like, actually, no, it does.
They're suffering.
They're suffering.
Yeah.
And I hate that.
Right.
I hate it, but it's also like, but you don't have to, but you don't want to do the work necessary.
Well, and it's all hard.
Yeah.
It's all hard, mm-hmm. right? And so before, when I wasn't doing anything because I didn't know what to do, that was really hard. But it was a comfortable hard.
Yeah.
Because it was what I knew.
Right.
This has also been hard.
Yeah.
Feeling things, facing myself, facing these wounds, but it's been worth it because of like the peace that has come with it. I feel like I know myself. I feel like I've been able to unbecome things that were conditioned in me, and I'll take that hard any day over that hard.
Well, it's like you see that meme that goes around that's like, divorce is hard, staying in a bad marriage, it's hard, choose your hard. And it like gives like these examples, and it's like, choose your hard. So it's like, now I know to choose the hard that's not the same as what I continue to choose. Like, yes, they're both hard, but if I choose this, nothing changes in my life. I'm going to choose the hard that makes things change.
Yeah.
it's going to be really uncomfortable, but it's different. And if I'm going to choose the same thing, nothing's going to change.
Right.
So, yeah.
And it also, like, it gives you power. It gives you your power back. Instead of being powerless to everything around you, like, it's like, no, like, this can change because I'm going to change.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very empowering.
Okay. So there was a post from a psychologist, and it's about depression, and I loved it. And so I'm going to share it. So she says, depression is a natural response to the loss of emotional intimacy. Understanding depression as grief. We live in a hyper-independent world that glorifies not needing anyone. In reality, emotional intimacy is one of our greatest needs. We're designed to depend on others and to have others depend on us. Having secure friendships, family, relationships, and romantic partnerships makes us more physically healthy, confident, and resilient. When we lose emotional intimacy, friendship, or romantic, the loss is intense. Our nervous system goes into fight or flight. Depression, or a freeze state in the body, is a natural response to a loss of emotional intimacy. Connection is so key to our survival that when we lose it, stop eating, have no energy, cannot sleep. This state of grieving is often why can't I say that word?
Pathologically?
Pathologized.
Pathologized. Okay, I didn't know what you were reading. Great job.
As a disorder or something that's abnormal. People who seemingly do well, we were literally just talking about that, after the loss of a relationship tend to be those who are disassociated or who repress their emotions, or they move on quickly to escape the discomfort that they feel. Without fulfilling connected relationships with people we can count on, depression will be our natural state. Belonging and bonding are just as important to how we eat and how often we move our bodies. If you're ready to connect with... Okay, never mind.
Oh, yeah, that last one.
I know.
DM me.
Right.
Okay. I just had this like visual as you were saying all of that.
Okay.
Because we said this from the beginning, like it's like about that having that emotional safety. And I do have that now. I have the safety of my partner who allows me to like feel these things and who isn't gaslighting me into feeling better. But I also think about there are people that I know who are in a state of depression always. Like I've always known them to be that way.
I know.
I don't know them any other way, but they're always going out on the weekends, hanging out with their friends. And it's like, you need people, you need your friends. So I'm hearing this and I'm in my head visualizing how this person sees like that could be a good thing. But what I'm seeing in my head is these friends being like, see, we're having fun. We're not depressed. Be happy, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, that's not the connection we're talking about. That's not a real connection we're talking about. We're talking about the friends who you can sit down with and talk to them about what you're going through and what you're feeling and who can like hold space for that without talking you out of it. Like I literally remember having to like train Jason how to hold space for me. And it was really hard for him. Like, it was really hard because I'd have to be like, I don't need you to fix it. I just want to talk about it. I just need you to be here. Just be here. You don't need to fix it. You don't need to say anything. And then he'd like start talking. I'm like, nope.
Well, I think a lot of men do that.
They're fixers.
They are fixers. And I think they have to allow the woman to have space to just feel.
Well, what did you say about men and women?
What did I say?
Women are the weather.
Oh, okay. Here it is. Okay. So women are the weather. It could be sunny. It could be windy. It could be rainy. Bitch, that could be a fucking tornado and some hail. I don't know. Men are the sky and they hold space for whatever is coming up.
I love that.
I love it too.
I love it. Did you make that up?
No.
Oh, I was like so impressed. I read it somewhere. Yeah. Saw it on TikTok. Yeah.
I saw it somewhere.
I love it though. And I had to like train him to like, that sounds terrible that I'm saying that, but it's true, because I had to be like, I am just going through emotions and I don't need you to do or say or fix anything. Just let me go through them. Yeah. And it's like, it was a practice, because he would realize that when he was able to do that, they would come and go.
Right.
And then things would be fine.
Right. And I know not all relationships are obviously heterosexual.
Right.
But I think it's
masculine and feminine energies.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. We all have both.
Right.
I hold space for his emotions.
Right. Exactly.
When he's having them. That too, like that, not feeling like you don't need anybody. That is a very masculine trait. Like, I don't care if you're female or male. Like, if you are like, I don't need anybody and I don't need to open up to people and I don't need anybody to witness me, like that is a very in your masculine trait. Mm-hmm. So the feminine is the one who is like opening up to you or allowing themselves to be vulnerable with somebody.
Men have feminine and masculine as well.
Yes.
So just
it goes
elaborate. Yeah.
You got anything to add?
No.
We didn't really touch on anxiety. I don't know if we have time.
Where are we at?
119.
I mean,
we could. It's going to be a little bit different, because I feel like you and we don't have to go deep into it, because we've talked about it before.
Yeah.
Like how
I never thought that I had depression. I always thought it was just anxiety.
Yeah.
I think it was both. You want me to be honest?
Yeah.
Which it's interesting that you went to your OBGYN, because I did the same thing.
Yeah.
And she put me on benzos, and I didn't take them for a long time at all. And I didn't like them. And I don't even know where I was going with that, but there was a lot of things in my life where I'm like, oh, I understand why you felt that way. Like, I understand why you had all of those feelings. Yeah. Because I wasn't connecting with myself. I wasn't doing any work to heal from my traumas. There was so much loss of connection. So I always just fell off.
And so now you look back and you're like, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's hard when you see people who are in that space.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I promise you, like, I was where you were, and there is a way out, but you have to connect with you.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to tell you to do that.
It's a really hard thing to tell somebody.
It's so hard. And it's especially like when you are around people and they're in this hamster wheel, and you're like, do I hold space for them? Do I offer them lifelines? But oftentimes when they're in that space, they're not ready to accept the lifeline.
Unfortunately, those are the types of friendships that I've had to let go of.
What if they're not friendships?
You mean what if they're like relationships?
No.
Or like what if they're like you?
No. What if they are
family? Mm-hmm. It's really hard. Mm-hmm. It's really, really hard. It's hard to sit back and watch someone suffer when you know they don't have to. Mm-hmm. But they are okay with it. It's difficult.
Well, it's not even that they're okay with it, because they're not okay.
They're not okay.
Right. It's what they know, and that's their comfort over doing the unknown, uncomfortable thing.
I have heard people say, this is just how I am. I've always lived this way. I'm used to it. I've heard a lot of people say that.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart, because I'm like, that isn't who you are, though. Yeah. And there is a better way to live. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to suffer with that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be like this every day.
Yeah.
So it's heartbreaking, but I guess kind of to what you were saying, like when someone's stuck in that hamster wheel and there's like all they have to do is step off of it, like it's really frustrating hearing this person talk about how hard the hamster wheel is.
I know.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
But you're right, because I've also been like, but I've been there too. Like I understand it because I've been there also. I didn't know that I could step off of it.
Right.
And I'm telling you, you can.
Right.
It's like I'm getting this like literal hamster wheel visual.
I'm too.
Because it's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever have anxiety?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. I had postpartum depression and anxiety.
Okay.
Yeah. So anxiety is weird for me now. And we talked about this with Allie too in that episode. Like it's almost like, it's kind of like the same way I feel about depression. Like ask yourself why it's there, why it's showing up, where it's showing up. Like where in your life does it show up more than usual? And sometimes it's like, well, I feel it when this person calls me.
Right.
Okay, why do you feel that way? I don't know. Well, are you setting boundaries? Is that person right for you? Is that person highly anxious? And it makes you feel anxious being around that person. Yeah. Or is it showing up every time you go to work? Do you hate your job? But you can't leave, I feel like once you can figure out what's causing it, like it makes it a little bit easier to sit in. Sometimes those are like unavoidable. Like my relationship was causing me a lot of anxiety, and I had to make changes, and so did he.
Yeah.
But then there are the little things that give me anxiety, like being in the car with my 16-year-old while he's learning to drive.
Well, yeah, right.
Well, and that's what she was saying. She was like, well, there are some things that are just unavoidably going to give you anxiety.
Okay. So I told you this morning, I have really bad anxiety. And I don't see anxiety as a bad thing anymore. I used to. I know I'm in a situation that's temporary for the next few days where I'm not in my comfort. So it makes me feel a little anxious. I know It's not forever, and it's okay. Like I'm okay with sitting in it.
Because you know that in a few days it's going to go away.
But so like I never thought I was depressed. I always thought I had just anxiety. And then I did my first mushroom journey. And I didn't have anxiety for a while, but oftentimes people were like, "Oh, so is your anxiety just gone?"
It healed it.
It healed it, and I'm like, no. I just know now when something like I can feel I'm more connected to myself, and so I know when situations aren't right for me, or people aren't right for me, or things aren't right for me, or whatever. And sometimes those things are inevitable. Like sometimes you just have to do things and they're not what you prefer to do, but it just is what it is.
Right.
But before, I was so disconnected with myself that I just had anxiety all the time, and then I would have panic attacks and have no idea that they were going to come on. Where now I don't have panic attacks because I know when the anxiety is starting to creep up, and I usually know why. I know it's a person. I know it's a place where I feel uncomfortable. I know it's, being around somebody who's highly anxious. I know the situation, and I know when it creeps up. So then I know what to do with. I know the why, and then I know like, okay, this is temporary, or if it's not temporary, what do I need to do? Do I need to remove this friend? Do I need to have boundaries with this person? Do I need to remove myself from this situation? Like, what needs to change? So I think that anxiety can be an invitation on like, what do I need? Why is it happening? And what does my body need in this moment? What do I need?
Paul Conti says, I'm going to find this. It's about anxiety. Sorry.
No, you're good. But I think it's your body's way of telling you something is up or off.
This is what he says.
Okay.
We all have anxiety. If you think you don't, look at where you're manic. Anxiety is an invitation to move, an initiation. It's our body telling us something needs to change. Look at where and when you are feeling anxious. Is there a theme? Is it with work? Is it with a friend, a partner, your family? So literally exactly the same thing that you were saying, coming from a psychiatrist of 30 years, 30 plus years, who's written several books. So like, you're not wrong. Mm-hmm. These are just the way that we're talking about this is not the way that a lot of people talk about it. They're like, well, it's normal to have anxiety. Like, here's some medication so you don't have it anymore.
Right.
I think it's like your body telling you when something is off. It's almost like a gut feeling, an intuition.
I think it's protecting.
And in some ways, in some areas, I feel like when you can't make a change, sometimes it feels better knowing that you can put a finger on what it is and then you can like recognize it. So I know that when I'm driving my son, like when he's driving and he's got to get his hours in, I'm super anxious. I've talked with my husband about it. We're putting him in driving classes because I'm like, I will feel better when he's a more comfortable driver. Yeah. But right now, my anxiety is not good for him in the car.
Right.
Because then he's on edge and I need him to be comfortable. But I can't, like, I am freaked out being in a car with a 16-year-old and I am just now having this realization. The first accident I was ever in was when I was 16 with a group of friends.
Oh, shit.
And it was the first time that I was allowed in a car with somebody else that wasn't my parents.
And it was an accident?
And we were truck flipped on the road, like people under the truck, like all of us had to go to the hospital. Like it was fucking, I am just now having this realization.
Oh, shit.
There's where it's from.
Well, and that's what I'm kind of mean by like, it's your body's way of looking out for you. We don't remember trauma, we relive it.
Oh my God. The fact that I'm like, of course I'm going to have anxiety. He's 16 and he's learning to drive.
It's always like, deeper than what it is.
Oh my God. I am just now remembering this situation.
So that makes so much sense. So your body,
I'm weird about my kids being in cars with other kids, with other people too. Like the thought of him getting in the car with another kid, another teenager, like gives me so much anxiety because I was part of a situation where it went poor and it could have gone so much worse and it didn't.
Right.
I've had ex-boyfriends die in car accidents. Like, so that at 16, 17 years old. So that type of stuff, like, yeah. So I told Jason, I was like, it's not good for him. Yeah. I don't know how to be stoic in this situation. I don't know how to be calm while he's learning to drive. It needs to be you or we need to put him in classes.
Yeah. But again, like, when people are anxious, they try to suppress it. They try to numb it. I know a lot of people who they feel so much anxiety and so they drink or they smoke because they don't want to feel that anxiety. So many people. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's their way of coping. And again, this can be an opportunity to like figure out the why.
Yeah.
Instead of suppressing it. Instead of just wanting it to go away, be like, okay, well, when do I feel anxious? Why? 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 Keep asking the why.
Yeah. Didn't Endora one time when we were talking about like how to know if you're ready for like a mushroom journey, she was like, continue to ask yourself why and then allow the mushrooms to assist you in the why. Like when you can answer the why, allow them to assist you in it.
Love that.
This has nothing to do with mushrooms, by the way. I just thought that was like an interesting take. Like, I think finding the why is so much bigger than we give it credit for and should really be the question we ask ourselves in any of these mental health situations. I know that the holidays are going to put me in a depressive episode or a spiral. I don't even know if I want to call it that anymore because I know what the holidays are for me.
I think grief comes with the holidays for the both of us.
Yeah.
We've learned, which is why we have decided we don't record during the holidays because we're going in.
We're going in. We're taking our descent.
We do, because it is. I think it's time. That's the time to go inward and connect with ourselves so we can show up for our family.
So
the podcast takes a backseat.
When you asked earlier what I would recommend for people to do when they like have jobs and families and can't do stuff, what I would say now, and I'm rethinking this because as you said that, I'm like, do less. You don't have to quit your job, but do less of the other things that take away from going in, which is what we did.
Yeah.
We isolate during the holidays. We isolate so hard that we forget that we're friends.
We do. But you know what I love though? What I love though is like there is this mutual respect that we both know that we're both isolating.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard as fuck.
Yeah.
But we both come out of it.
But I see a lot of people who struggle with depression or anxiety, and I'm like, okay, you have this, you have this, you have this. It makes
so much sense.
On your plate. Like, take some stuff on your plate. But there's an attachment to it.
Yeah.
Because there's, I think, an unconscious avoidance to go in.
Yeah.
And to sit with themselves and to just be. Because when they are, you know, they're PTA mom, they have their job.
Was just gonna
help with carpool. They're doing this, doing that. Blah,
volunteering
blah, blah.
here, volunteering
or
there.
even just I can't be alone. I always have to be with friends.
Yeah,
there's an avoidance there.
Yeah,
and so I think there has to be some self accountability within that.
Yeah,
like if you're on this hamster wheel, that's a really
I've
great
had clients.
First place to start is doing less.
Do less.
Say no to more things.
I have had clients who open up to me about what they're going through, but then they are like the volunteer mom, the PTA mom.
And they're not willing to give it up.
Booking this and booking that and doing this and doing that. And there's nothing that they want to let go of. Here's something somebody told me a long time ago, and I don't know where I heard this or how I heard it, but like imagine everything in your life as like balls that you're juggling. Some are glass, some are rubber. So like your family and your glass balls. Like sometimes a career can be a glass ball. Balls. Juggle those balls. Jiggly. And sometimes you're going to have to let go of some of those rubber balls so those glass ones don't shatter.
So like for you and I, we closed our businesses. We lost a lot of friendships. Mm-hmm. Not that we were ever big drinkers, but like I became much more introverted, and the people who stayed were the people who stayed.
Yeah. And
so oftentimes we think that we have these deep attachments to things outside of ourselves when we kind of really don't.
Yeah. But I can understand why people think that they do.
100%.
Well, and like, so the mom that I was talking about when I'm like, well, but why do you do that? Well, nobody else is going to do it. People did it before you.
Right.
Let some other schmuck be the one. like you take care of you.
Yeah.
Like just because you're the one they go to doesn't mean you're the only option. That's a lesson.
But we are a society that rewards busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like,
and people
down,
look at her and they're like, oh my God, she does it all. Wow. But then like, I know she's not okay with doing it all.
Well, and people on the outward, because again, a lot of times when we're not okay, people have no fucking idea.
Right.
So people look at that outwardly and they're like, wow, look at her. She's fucking crushing it. I've said that about you, where I'm like, I thought you had the perfect family, everything aesthetically, pictures, it looked all like rainbows and butterflies and unicorns, but it wasn't that.
No.
But we reward that.
Yeah.
So slowing down, saying no, doing less, just being instead of doing, that is an act of rebellion. So it might not feel right, quote unquote right.
Yeah. It's literally what Allie was saying in her episode, her sister being like, just do. And I so wanted to step in and be like, no. I'm glad you didn't do. I'm glad you were just being.
You rebel you.
So just don't it.
That's the episode.
Just don't it.
Just don't it.
I love that so much.
Just don't it.
Just don't it.
We are anti-Nike. Just do it. Nope. Just don't it.
Just don't it. I'm going to get that on a pair of Nikes.
Just don't.
I'm tired of doing.
Yeah.
It's always do.
Right. We're anti just do it. Don't it.
I want to be. Just
right.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Great way to end.
Okay. So I feel like we need to say none of this is medical advice. That's with any of our episodes, though. But I hope that you got this far and maybe are rethinking your thoughts about
that's a step.
Mental health. Just being open to a possibility that it's not what you thought. And that there is a way out of it and there is another side. And it's a beautiful side and it's a really hard side, but it's super fucking rewarding. So yeah. That's it. And The Heroine's Journey, we'll link it because this is one of those books that, like I said, I'm rereading it and highlighting because I didn't do it the first time. So
dummy.
So fucking good. I'm going to just carry a highlighter with me everywhere I go.
You should.
So yeah, be open, stay curious. We'll see you on the other side.
And happy Mental Health Awareness Month.
Mental Health Awareness Month. Happy Mental Health Awareness Month.
Why did I say that? Cut it. Cut it.